News Now is brought to you by the Bank of Guam, the People's Bank. From the Pacific News Center in Hagåtña, Guam, here's Clint Ridgell and Janella Carrera with Betsy Brown and Roselle Romanes. PNC Sports with Blake Watson. And weather with Joanna O. With your news now.
Hafa, good evening, and thanks for tuning into the Pacific News Center. I'm Clint Ridgell.
And I'm Janella Carrera. Thanks for tuning in. Your top story tonight. Fighting through tears, the victim in the rape trial of Frances Jude Taitano took the stand today and described in detail how she was raped. Here's more. Now 18 years old, the victim in the rape trial of Frances Jude Taitano took the stand to testify against the man she says raped her when she was only 10 years old. "I remember it like it was yesterday," she said. She told the jury that it happened one night in May of 2007 at Taitano's apartment. The victim was sleeping over and was sleeping on the same bed that Taitano and his wife Kathy shared. At around 2 or 3 in the morning, Taitano woke up the victim and asked her to go outside with him. The victim says the two went to the back patio where she says Taitano forced her to fondle him, then kissed her. The victim says she tried to refuse, but Taitano was forceful. Resisting his demands, the victim says Taitano then took her back inside the bedroom and made her watch as he tried to have sex with his wife. Kathy woke up, but she refused to have sex with him and went back to sleep, so the victim says he turned to her instead, lying her down in between him and Kathy as he raped her. The victim described feeling pain and says she was crying through it. It woke up Kathy, but the victim says all she did was tell her to go back to sleep. But under cross-examination, defense attorney Mark Condis pointed out that the victim's statements to police and to a social worker differed from the testimony she gave under direct examination. Condis says the victim told police that she and Taitano were facing each other on the bed, but the victim says she lay on her side and he was behind her. Condis also pointed out that the victim told a social worker that Taitano ejaculated inside her. The victim says he didn't. Finally, Condis says several times throughout his questioning that the victim had multiple opportunities to escape, like when the two were in the back patio. Condis says that the victim could have easily run to her parents' apartment, which was just 2 doors down. When the two went back inside the bedroom and the victim stood at the foot of the bed as Taitano allegedly tried to have sex with his wife, Condis noted that the victim could have run out the door. "You wanted to go home, but you didn't," Condis argued. "No," the victim admitted. Meanwhile, the victim's younger sister also testified today. She told the jury that although she was not sexually assaulted by Taitano, he has touched her inappropriately. The younger sister said Taitano had occasionally slapped her on her butt. She testified that it was uncomfortable, but she believed at the time that he was only being playful. Trial continues tomorrow in Judge Maria Senzon's courtroom. Meanwhile, also in Superior Court today, a former police officer will have to serve 8 years in prison for growing pot and smoking it while on the job. Roy Pablo was sentenced today. Here's what he had to say. Former police officer Roy Pablo pleaded with Judge Alberto Lamarena for leniency on his sentencing. Pablo was found guilty in October last year of manufacturing and smoking marijuana while on the job, and he admits to it.
As to my drug use during the tenure I was a police officer, there's no excuse, Your Honor. I have been doing drugs way before that, and I was a victim to the addiction of smoking marijuana.
And while he admits he was addicted to the drug, he says he did not realize at the time how his actions would affect his family, especially his children. Now, he says, after going through rehab, he is completely drug-free, something he hoped the judge would consider in sentencing him.
The people who my actions took the most toll upon were my children. I did not ever stop to realize that until I couldn't be with them.
Judge Lamarena responded to Pablo before announcing his sentence, pointing out that what he found the most appalling about Pablo's crime was that he was a police officer of Guam.
Firstly, you're a police officer, or you were a police officer. You swore when you were sworn in that you will well and faithfully support the laws of Guam. The people of Guam expects a police officer to at least, be not under influence of a narcotic drug or a drug that will impair his or her judgment when they go out to protect the public.
With that, Judge Lamarena sentenced Pablo to 15 years in prison, but he suspended 7 of those years so that Pablo would only have to serve 8 years at DOC. Pablo's wife, Aram Rose Kim, who was also convicted of the same crime, she was also sentenced today. Judge Lamarena says he was inclined to be more lenient with her since she was not in a position of public trust. Kim was sentenced to 1 year in prison with credit for time served.
A man is on life support at the Guam Memorial Hospital after losing control and crashing in his all-terrain vehicle last night. PNC's Rizal Romanes visited the accident site this morning, and she has more in this report.
A 42-year-old man is on life support following an accident on his all-terrain vehicle last night. There's limited information on the case, but the fire department sent a release last night that the man suffered serious injuries in the crash. The release says the accident occurred on Route 2 in Agate just before 9:30 last night. According to a man's relative and neighbor, she and her boyfriend were home when they heard a loud crash. When her boyfriend went outside to check where the noise came from, he found the 42-year-old man lying on the road with his ATV by the bushes. She says her boyfriend then called 911. Police say the man lost control of his ATV when he was heading home in Santa Ana Drive, but his relative says she believes it was more than that because of the injuries he sustained. As a result of the crash and based on the markings on the road, it appears that the man was thrown about 10 feet from his ATV. His relative tells PNC that Santa Ana Drive is very dangerous, narrow, and dark at night. Regardless, she usually sees the man riding his ATV around the area. The man was originally taken to Naval Hospital but was transferred to the Guam Memorial Hospital early this morning. He was admitted at the intensive care unit. Guam Police Department spokesman AJ Valhaja says Highway Patrol is conducting an investigation. Rizal Romanes, PNC News.
In light of the issues that continue to plague the Archdiocese of Agana, one topic that seems to be at the top of the allegations against the church is the status of the Redemptoris Mater Seminary, or RMS, in Jonya. Many in the community have questioned whether the Archdiocese still owns or even controls the property. A former hotel, the Archdiocese of Agana purchased the building back in 2002. It was valued at around $40 million at the time, but the church purchased it for a meager $2 million. Local Catholic observer Tim Rohr believes that since its purchase, the Archdiocese has made some secret dealings that have officially turned over the property to a third party, namely a corporation made up of Italians. And he has the deed restriction to prove it. Rohr even sought the opinion of experts such as realtors and attorneys, who he says read over the documents and agreed that control of the property no longer belongs to the Archdiocese. The deed restriction reads, in part, I decree to designate, assign, earmark, and otherwise set aside the property to the Redemptoris Mater Archdiocesan Missionary Seminary of Guam, a nonprofit corporation in perpetual use. Essentially, Rohr believes that the Archdiocese, having this asset worth over $40 million, gave it away to another corporation that's not controlled by the Archdiocese. However, the Archdiocese of Agana denies these claims. In response to media questions, the Archdiocese said although the property is designated for the use of the seminary now, it can always be redesignated in the future with respect to the donors who funded the purchase of the property back in 2002. Those donors, says Rohr, belong to the Neo-Catechumenal Way. The Archdiocese, however, says that the title of the RMS is still listed in the property of the Archdiocese of Agana. You can read the deed restriction and the Archdiocese's response on the matter online at pacificnewscenter.com.
Congresswoman Madeleine Bordallo held a swearing-in ceremony on Guam today. And although she already took the oath of office in the U.S. mainland, she usually returns home to Guam to take a ceremonial oath of office in front of her constituents. This is Bordallo's 7th term, and she is joining the ranks of the 114th U.S. Congress.
And in other news, the CCU now has a new chairman and vice chairman. The Consolidated Commission on Utilities held a vote on the matter immediately after being sworn in today in their new boardroom in the new GWA-GPA headquarters along the back road at Fadea and Manila.
Joseph Duenas is now the new chairman of the Consolidated Commission on Utilities. He was voted in after the CCU's inauguration this morning.
Of course, we're going to be continuing all the good work that we do. With GWA, we're going to continue to work on the court-ordered projects. But in addition to that, we really have to bring that agency along and really help them to grow as an agency and mature as an agency, where they can not only do the court-order projects, but they'll be able to improve service for other parts that are not part of the court-order project, like replacing lines on an annual basis, fixing fire hydrants, getting all those things done.
As for GPA, Duenas says they need to work on a cleaner way to generate energy, like liquid natural gas. Francis Santos was elected as the vice chair of the CCU and George Bamba as the secretary. Santos and Bamba, who are both former senators, are also the two newest members of the CCU.
We obviously have some issues before us. The FENA issue that's going to come up before us very shortly, and also there's some issues that we have to deal with EPA that are just looming, and are out there. And I think commissioners are well aware that we have to hit the road here pretty quick and get all these things, resolved and for the betterment of our island.
With respect to GPA, I've always stated my position that of course, lowering rates will be a priority. How we do that, it has to be balanced out with the needs of the utility versus the ratepayers. But I think it can be done. I've always been a proponent of renewable energies, and I'd really like to see more renewables and actually provided by independent power producers. That in itself creates a new industry in Guam, and we can be actually a model for other islands that have similar characteristics as Guam.
Santos, Bamba, and Duenas all agree that the #1 priority is to find a new general manager for both GPA and GWA. All right, now let's check in with PNC's Rizal Romanes, who's got some information about a big concert coming up.
Want to hear more of these guys?
Stay tuned.
Stay tuned.